Revealed, how Xi Jinping is employing his spies against NATO, essentially helping Russia amid new war fears. A five-star resort overlooking parts of RAF Akrotiri has triggered concern among UK intelligence and military officials. UK's base in Cyprus is under China's scanner. Here's why NATO is spooked by Putin's nuclear ally in its vicinity. Is Xi Jinping using the Chinese-owned hotel as a cover to keep watch on NATO's operations before war? RAF Akrotiri hosts F-35 fighter jets and US U-2 reconnaissance aircraft, and officials worry that a high vantage point could help visually identify flights that are not easily visible through public flight tracking services. Will China eventually join Putin in waging the deadliest war NATO has witnessed in decades? As NATO faces heightened tensions with Russia in Europe and growing strategic competition with China, British officials are examining a potential surveillance risk near one of the UK's most important overseas bases. British intelligence and military sources have voiced concern about the Chinese-owned City of Dreams Mediterranean resort near Limassol, Cyprus, and its possible use as an observation point. Officials told the Telegraph that the resort could theoretically be exploited to monitor operations at RAF Akrotiri, although there is no public evidence that surveillance or espionage has actually occurred. The concerns were reported by the Telegraph on August 28, citing unnamed intelligence and military sources, who identified the hotel's location as the principal security issue. The 16-story City of Dreams Mediterranean Hotel overlooks parts of RAF Akrotiri, a key British military installation used to support operations across the Middle East. The resort is close to the UK's sovereign base areas and is taller than many nearby structures, giving upper-floor guests a broad view across parts of the surrounding landscape and military facilities. Security sources say a person positioned at a suitable high-level vantage point could potentially use basic optical equipment, including binoculars, to observe visible activity at the base. Officials are concerned that visible troop movements, vehicle traffic and activity around the base perimeter could potentially be monitored from a hotel, depending on conditions and the observer's location. The hotel's elevated position could potentially enable observers to visually confirm aircraft takeoffs and landings, including flights that may not appear on public radar tracking platforms. RAF Akrotiri is reported to host British F-35 combat aircraft and US U-2 Dragon Lady reconnaissance planes, making it a particularly sensitive location for operational security concerns. UK sources fear Chinese authorities might seek to exploit the hotel's physical location for intelligence gathering, but the Telegraph found no evidence of suspicious activity during its visit. RAF Akrotiri is expected to consider additional counter-surveillance measures in response to the perceived risk, aimed at protecting personnel, movements, and sensitive flight operations. Access to the hotel's top floor is restricted to guests using its 2 presidential suites, an arrangement that has heightened concern about who could gain access to its best vantage points. Crucially, the report makes no allegation of wrongdoing by the hotel, Melco Resorts, its chairman Lawrence Ho, or any of its staff, and no evidence has been presented that the facility has been used for espionage. The hotel is part of Melco Resorts and Entertainment, led by Chinese-Canadian businessman Lawrence Ho, who is a member of the National Committee of the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference. A City of Dreams Mediterranean spokesperson rejected the concerns in the strongest terms, saying the resort is dedicated exclusively to tourism, leisure and business events, and that claims of any other purpose are unfounded. In its strongest warning yet, Russia sent a chilling message to Britain and Ukraine, signaling that the confrontation could escalate further. The Russian Foreign Ministry, on August 27, claimed UK military targets are now on Moscow's radar as tensions continue to intensify. Zakharova warned Russia is ready to strike UK military sites inside Ukraine and potentially beyond Ukrainian territory if attacks continue. Spokeswoman Maria Zakharova accused London of terrorism against Russian civilians, sharply escalating Moscow's rhetoric against Britain. Russia also lashed out at France and Germany, accusing Ukraine's key European backers of playing with fire through deeper military involvement.
I would like to specifically highlight the destructive role played by the Euro trio, the leaders of France, Britain, and Germany, in stoking this very Ukrainian crisis. While Germany once again dreams of creating, in the words of current German officials and government members, the strongest army in Europe, the French and British have announced steps to transfer military technology to Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. While in Kiev, British Prime Minister Andy Burnham underscored the continuity of London's anti-Russian stance and confirmed that the British side had not only supplied the armed forces of Ukraine with long-range strike capabilities, but also provided Kyiv with the technical data needed to independently assemble Storm, Shadow/Scalp cruise missiles at Ukrainian facilities. It is obvious that by deciding to hand over so-called assembly functions to the Ukrainians, London and Paris are making a desperate attempt to absolve themselves of responsibility for strikes deep within our country's territory. It will not work. You in Paris, London, Berlin, and other capitals bear direct responsibility for involvement in these terrorist attacks. I want to reiterate, and everyone must realize this, not just those making these decisions, but also those implementing them in the West, that they are playing with fire, and the consequences could be absolutely unpredictable, including for them personally.
Russia's warning came after Ukraine struck Donetsk with British Storm Shadow missiles on August 26, according to Moscow's account of the attack. Moscow accused Ukraine of using British missiles to attack civilians in Russia-occupied Donetsk, further intensifying its confrontation with London. British leadership should carefully analyze or risk escalating the conflict, Zakharova warned, signaling Moscow's growing anger over Western weapons.
We have repeatedly warned that the response to Ukrainian strikes using British weapons on Russian territory could target any British military facilities and equipment, whether in Ukraine or beyond. Those responsible for war crimes, including those committed against our country's civilian population, will be punished in accordance with their actions. Inescapable retribution awaits their accomplices and instigators, and we urge all residents of the United Kingdom to reflect on the inevitable, catastrophic consequences of their authorities' hostile actions. And we call upon the British leadership to carefully reassess the situation and immediately, decisively, and unequivocally abandon a hostile, aggressive course that serves only to prolong the agony of the Kyiv neo-Nazi regime and risks escalating the conflict to a fundamentally new level.
On August 26, Ukraine carried out deadly strikes on the Russia-controlled region of Donetsk, according to Russian officials, adding another flashpoint to the escalating conflict. Ukraine allegedly launched a missile strike on the Russian-occupied city of Donetsk on August 26, with Moscow blaming Kiev for the attack. The strikes reportedly damaged residential buildings and civilian infrastructure across Donetsk, according to regional head Denis Pushilin. Footage emerging from Donetsk showed damage near the Druzhba Sports Center, including a building that reportedly partially collapsed after the strikes. Pushilin claimed that Anglo-French Storm Shadow and Scalp EG missiles were used in the attacks across the city, escalating the focus on Western-supplied weapons. Denis Pushilin said, and I quote, "The strikes targeted several locations in the east of Donetsk, with most of the casualties reported near the Donetsk City Mall. The Western-supplied munitions used included the Anglo-French Storm Shadow Scalp EG missiles. At least 8 civilians, including 2 minors, were injured in the strikes near the mall, while another man was wounded by the detonation of an unexploded ordnance piece at another location. 2 other civilians were wounded in the Ukrainian attacks elsewhere in the DPR. A total of 8 residential buildings, 11 civilian infrastructure sites, and multiple cars were damaged in the attacks across the city and beyond." Unquote. Russian investigators have launched a probe into the strikes and begun collecting evidence from the affected sites to determine the scale and circumstances of the attack. Days after Moscow issued threats over Britain's expanded support for Ukraine, reports said UK security officials received intelligence assessments warning that Russia could consider retaliatory actions against British interests. Prime Minister Andy Burnham was reportedly warned that Britain's high-profile military assistance to Kyiv could increase the risk of Russian retaliation, although neither London nor Moscow has confirmed a specific imminent threat. Security experts told the Daily Mail that Downing Street should prepare for a possible direct response from Moscow, a warning based on anonymous sources rather than publicly released intelligence. The warning was reported by the Daily Mail on August 26 and attributed to unnamed security sources, meaning the underlying intelligence and its confidence level have not been made public. The report claims the Kremlin may have underestimated Burnham's commitment to Kyiv and could now seek to pressure Britain, but this assessment has not been independently verified or officially attributed by UK authorities. The Daily Mail cited sources saying Putin faces domestic pressure to challenge Britain over its growing involvement in Ukraine, including its plans to help Kyiv manufacture long-range missiles. The reported alert came as CIA Director John Ratcliffe traveled to Moscow and met Russian intelligence officials, in the first known visit by a U.S. intelligence chief since before Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. Reports said Ratcliffe warned Russian officials against further escalation in Ukraine and against any action directed at Kyiv's Western allies, though neither side released a detailed official account of the talks. According to the Daily Mail, the warning followed U.S. intelligence concerns that Russia could take escalatory action as battlefield progress slows, but this alleged assessment has not been publicly substantiated. The Daily Mail linked the reported departure of Russia's UK envoy to concern about an impending escalation, but there is no public evidence proving that the move signaled a planned Russian operation. The report says UK security chiefs were considering possible threats against the Prime Minister or defense sites, but there has been no official confirmation of a credible assassination plot or an identified target list. Former Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Andrei Fedorov said he could not rule out semi-military action and referenced sites involved in producing drones for Ukraine, though he did not provide evidence, identify attackers, or describe a specific plan. Fedorov did not give details about how any action against Britain might occur, leaving the nature, timing, and credibility of the implied threat unclear. Major British defense companies are reportedly tightening site protection and cybersecurity as a precaution, reflecting broader concern over espionage, sabotage, and digital threats connected to the Ukraine war.
Upgrade your news experience with the all-new HT app. Download now.